We did a lead tracking for service-based businesses episode. Now, as promised, we're doing one for retail or product-based businesses. While it seems straightforward to know sales for a retail business, the tricky part is to know where the sales are coming from. In today's episode, I'm going to chat with you about tracking product sales referral sources so you know where your sales are coming from.
Inkyma's Marketing Strategies is a podcast for small business owners hosted by Audrey Kirchner, co-founder and chief marketing strategist at Inkyma, helping you navigate the world of marketing so that you can market your business in the right way, see growth, and thrive regardless of the industry you're in. To learn more about Inkyma and what we do, ask a question, or schedule a marketing evaluation, go to the website inkyma.com. That's INKYMA.com. Listen to the show on your podcast player of choice, the Inkyma website, or the Inkyma YouTube channel. Just search for Inkyma Marketing Strategies and you'll find what you need.
So before we get into the details of all of this, let's talk a little housekeeping. As you know from previous episodes, I like to make product recommendations. I like to tell you about articles I've written that pertain to that part of the episode and previous podcast episodes. So all of that is in the show notes on the website. Go to inkyma.com, INKYMA.com, and the links and everything like that are going to be in the show notes. And there's a rough transcript as well in the show notes. So if there's something that you want to go back and understand a little bit better, the transcript will definitely help you with that. The other thing is that we are partners with many of the products that I recommend from show to show and in all of our articles. So we do get a small commission if you use our links to click through and buy. But again, these are all products that we use, that we have tested. We don't recommend anything that we don't feel would be useful in the context of we're giving it to you. So please use our links. Click through, buy if you feel it's necessary, because all that income helps us keep creating all this great content for you. Okay, so as I mentioned, tracking sales for retail, it's pretty straightforward. You go into your system, you look and see how many sales you had for a month, a year, a day. But what you don't have at your fingertips is where these sales came from, how they happened. And in today's world, a retail or a product-based company typically has multiple sources where they sell. A lot of companies don't just sell at brick and mortar, or they don't just sell online in their specific shop. They have different sources. And so what you want to know is that when you have sales come through, tracking where they've come from. And what this does is knowing where they come from helps you better maximize the sources. So you can do more with the sources where you get the most sales. And then you can try to bolster the other sources that may not be doing as well. And a lot of this involves software, right? Almost all of it involves some type of software. It's the age that we live in now. Even your point of sale systems are software based. And so with that, there are a ton of software systems for each of the things I'm going to talk to you about today, right? POS systems, email commerce, e-commerce, email. So I'm going to talk about this from the perspective of the systems that I know and that I use with our clients day to day. That doesn't mean that if you have a different system, it's not as good. It could be better. It's just I haven't come across it. It's not the right tool for the job that I'm doing, but it could be working perfectly for you. Take all of what I'm saying into consideration with the systems that you're using today. But if you don't like your current system, you can then consider switching, because we're giving you an alternative. So before I start talking about all the different bits and pieces of this, let's talk about why it's important to know where your sales are coming from. And it really comes down to your marketing spend, right? You want to know the ROI of your marketing spend, your return on investment. If you're running digital ads, you want to know if you're getting your money's worth. If you're doing email marketing, there's a lot of time and effort that gets put into those. Are you getting that back? And so when you're looking at reports, what you want to do is look at your sales channels or your sources, I'm going to use those terms interchangeably, to see where your revenue is coming from. And then you're going to ask yourself the question, should I put more money into a specific sales channel, or should I back off? Should I pull out money? So let's talk about an example. Let's say you're running digital ads and you're running them on YouTube and you're doing a Google display campaign. I did a whole episode on YouTube ads, so that link is in the show notes if you're curious about that. And let's say in this example, your YouTube ads are getting a lot more sales than your display ads, right? Because you're seeing the data and you're looking at it. And so here you can make a decision about your ad budget. You have a couple of different options. You can increase your YouTube ad budget to see if that's going to actually exponentially increase your sales. So if you're spending $100 and you're getting 10 sales, if you spend $200, you're going to get 20 sales, 25 sales, 30 sales. You got to see where that balance is. And then where is that going to come from? If you can't increase your budget, do you pull money from your display ad budget to put into your YouTube ad budget so your net amount spent each month could be the same, right? But you have more of it going to the sales channel that's actually giving you more sales. And this is a really good example because understanding how digital ads work, it's really about volume. The more money you put into it, the more awareness and impressions you're going to get, the more likelihood you're going to get a sale, right? It's a very linear process, not a lot of design or influence with that. So that's the why this is really important. And that makes sense across your in-person sales, your email, any place else where you're generating sales. So before I get into all those different places that you're going to generate sales, I want to talk to you about reporting, right? You need a place for all this data to land. And that's what a report is for, or that's the way we like to do reporting. Let me put it that way. And so what we do is if you have multiple sales channels, we pull all that data into a Google Data Studio report. Google Data Studio is a Google product. It is free. It's actually a pretty great product. And what that system, the Google Data Studio system, allows you to do is pull in all this data from your different sources, right? So you're not order entering it. We like a product called Supermetrics. It's a data aggregator, meaning they have connections with different data sources, and you pick the data sources, you pick the pieces of data you want, it connects it, and then it automatically pulls it in. So you're setting this report up once, and then it's automatically pulling that data in every single day. And then you can look at it for a day, a week, a month, a quarter, 6 weeks, however you want to slice it and dice it. But it's pulling all those different data sources into one place for you, which is extremely powerful. Because if you can compare how your email is doing versus your point of sale system with regards of where the sales are coming from, that's a lot of information for you to make decisions on. And so now let's talk about what those sales channels, those referral sources are that I'm going to dive into more in this episode. Again, this list is going to be in the show notes, so you don't have to furiously try to find a pencil right now. So the total list is going to be there. So in-store sales, which are going to be your point of sale system, right? That's people coming in, grabbing stuff, buying it, and leaving. Telephone orders. Yes, telephone orders still happen. They're pretty frequent. People are calling you, whether you're in a retail location or you're in your warehouse, right? I've seen a lot of companies where they warehouse everything in a location and they're constantly just taking orders either via phone, used to be fax, probably not anymore. And then, of course, they're online shopping. So telephone orders, email. Right? You send out a sales email, people then click through and start buying from it. An e-commerce storefront, specifically Shopify, where they go online, they put stuff in their cart, and they buy it. Digital ads can be displayed pretty much anywhere, and those ads can drive people back to your online store or to your brick and mortar to then get the sale. But that one's really important because that particular sale was generated to the location. And then I'm going to talk about secondary selling platforms like Etsy, Amazon, Walmart. A lot of e-commerce folks, if they have their own store, they're going to have one of these secondary selling platforms, or one of these platforms might be their primary. And then the last one, which people don't think about a lot, is Google Shopping, the Google Merchant account. We'll talk more about that. And that's why we're recommending using Google Data Studio and using Supermetrics. I talked all about Supermetrics in episode 48, so definitely go take a listen to that, because your POS system or your Shopify store or your Amazon store isn't going to be able to give you the full picture if you're using 3 or 4 of these different sales channels to pull data from, right? Google Data Studio, it's that independent piece, and you're going to get that set up first and foremost. All right, so let's start talking about these sales channels in a little bit more detail. So in-store sales, if you are a brick and mortar retail, you're going to have a point of sale system, right? That's where you're taking your credit cards, you're logging your cash, your inventory control, however you have that set up. And the tool that we like for this is Lightspeed. It's a pretty user-friendly online system. They've got great databases, and it works for e-commerce as well as for in-person retailers and restaurants. So depending on the type of business you are, they pretty much have you covered, and it all syncs back-end wise with all different types of systems. It integrates. They don't have a Supermetrics connector, but you can use Zapier to pull that data in to Google Data Studio. The next one is telephone orders. Yeah, there's a lot of businesses that people still call and they give you their credit cards. I remember during the pandemic, before people could get their online stores set up, they were literally taking orders via telephone. And my guess is a lot of that hasn't gone away. There are still people that do not want to put their credit card in online, and they may be more willing to call. So if you are taking telephone orders, hopefully you're taking that and you're putting those orders directly into a system, whether it's your physical point of sale system or you're maybe adding the order physically to your e-commerce site, to your Shopify once the order comes in so that you can track it. And then that data can get pulled through into the reporting. But the other thing that you're going to want, right, is you're going to want a virtual answering service like Grasshopper, because what that does is every time your phone rings, it tracks the call. Right? So whether you pick up the call, one of your sales associates picks up the call, or if the person goes to voicemail, the person may leave you a message saying, hey, I want to order X, Y, and Z. You have my card on file. Please process it if it's reoccurring. Because that way you can pull in that telephone data and then match that up to your sales. So one of the nice things to see with that is that, let's say you got 2,000 phone calls in a month. And then from that, you can pull from your point of sale system or your online system where you actually put the orders, make sure they're tagged telephone orders, and then you can say from those 2,000 calls, 1,000 sales were made. You can look at that and go, okay, how do I convert more of those telephone calls into sales? Could it be that a bunch of them weren't answered, right? Because you'll know from the Grasshopper data which ones were answered, which ones left a message, and who hung up. So the hang-ups. And that may spur you to say, okay, I've got to get someone dedicated to just always answering the phone. That way we don't miss a phone call. Because some people are not comfortable with leaving a voicemail. If they're a first-time customer and they want to talk to somebody, they're not going to leave a voicemail with sales information. And so all of that data can get pulled into your Google Data Studio report so that you can see how many calls you made, how many voicemails were left, how many were hang-ups, and then how many sales came through, helping you make decisions. So now let's talk about email. Right? If you're doing email marketing, and you should be doing email marketing, it's a great way to get more sales from existing customers and to entice people to become first-time customers. You can put coupons on, you can talk about what your latest release is. I talk about all of this in episode 46 about selling more through email. And if you're using MailChimp, you definitely have a leg up if you're an e-commerce store using Shopify, because Shopify and MailChimp integrate beautifully. MailChimp connects and then it actually pulls all of your data through so that when someone makes a sale on Shopify, that data comes through and you get to see how much they bought. And then you can run emails based off of their buying levels. Again, I talk about a lot of that in episode 46. You can get your abandoned carts coming through, and you can set up an abandoned cart series inside of MailChimp to aggregate the Shopify one. I did an article in Marketing Masterminds. That's also in the show notes. So from a reporting perspective, Supermetrics does have a data source for MailChimp, which makes it super easy to connect. You pull the data in and you can see all of your campaign activity. So let's say you put out a sales email and you can see how many people opened it, who clicked through, and then how many sales were because of that email, right? Because once they click through, if they click on the buy button, because those buy buttons are directly integrated back into Shopify, or if they use a discount code that's in the email, that's also directly connected to Shopify. You can actually see how many sales that particular email generated. And let's say you send 3 or 4 in a month. You've got all that data sitting right there to see, okay, I sent 4 emails, I got 50 sales, this is great. And then you can see your open and your click-through rates too to see how you can try to improve that. So all of that comes through. Okay, now let's talk about your e-commerce storefront, specifically Shopify. Shopify has great analytics tools, right? They track all your sales. They tell you percentage of sales, all this great stuff. What the basic version of Shopify doesn't do, or makes it very difficult for you to find, is that sales source. If they're coming from a secondary selling platform, the data is great. We'll talk about that in a minute. But if it's coming from other places, they don't necessarily pull it in. So grabbing your Shopify data independently and putting it on your Google Data Studio report is super important, because then you can see how much is coming from your point of sale system, from Shopify. And then if there's something in Shopify where it came from an ad, which we'll talk about, or from email, or from another source, you can start breaking those out, because that's just as important. Online versus offline is two segments, but then those segments branch down and you want to see all of that. So let's talk about one of those breakout branches, digital ads. Digital ads can be run to drive people to your online store, to your physical location, or to call your store, right? You have different calls to actions that you can use for digital ads. And then depending on the ad platform, like if you're using Google Ads, one of the Google ads you can run is to get them to call. And so if you're doing that, you can actually track the number of clicks on the telephone number from the ad. And then if you're using Grasshopper, the virtual assistant, then you can see all the rest of the data. How many people spoke to a human, left a voicemail, hung up after they made the phone call, and then how many sales were derived from that. So you can see now that you're starting to combine these data sources a little bit, you can follow the trail. If you're pushing people to go into the store, I do suggest you also provide some type of a coupon code. It doesn't have to be for a lot, but at least it helps bridge that gap from online back to offline. And so if they come into the store and they use that coupon code, each coupon code should be specific to that particular ad. If you're running 3 ads, you should have 3 different codes that are being used, because then when they come in for a sale and they use the code, you know exactly where they came from, which ad they came from. And then in your system, your point of sale system, you should be tracking that particular coupon code back to that ad. So if it's code 123, that came from Google YouTube ad for January of 2023. And that data gets pulled into the report, so you can see which coupon and ads are doing better and what sales came from. And then if you're running a digital ad to your online store, that's probably the easiest to track. You don't have to use a coupon code, because what happens is in Google Analytics with Google Tag Manager and your digital ads, you can actually track from the ad to the store and what sales were made, or what abandoned shopping carts were done as events. And so what this shows you is how much website traffic is being generated from the ad, and then how many sales are being derived from it. And you may be running, like in the example I talked about before, you may be running 3 or 4 different online ads, and then you can compare and see which ones are doing better than others. Is it a Google Shop ad that's doing the best? Is it a YouTube ad? Is it a display ad? Is it a click to call ad? Which one is really doing the best? Because you may have 5 running and 2 of them are doing really well. You can turn the other 3 off. So depending on the ad platform you're using, Supermetrics does have data aggregators already created. Like Google, absolutely. Facebook, absolutely. Others, you have to double check and see if they have an aggregator already built. If not, you should be able to pull that data in through a Zapier, or see if you can connect it directly with Google Analytics. So now let's talk about secondary selling platforms, Etsy, Amazon, Walmart. There are others out there and you may be using them, but those are the top 3. And I think they're really great. I call them secondary selling platforms because for an online store or an in-person store, these would be another sales channel. You may be a shop where one of these 3 is your primary. Then I would suggest that, if you're an Amazon shop, that's great, but also branch out and have a secondary selling platform to that. You either open your Shopify, or maybe you use Walmart or Etsy or something else. The reason for this is that these secondary selling platforms, you don't own them. Be very aware that they can turn your store off at any time, and it's usually not a human that's doing it. You're usually catching an error message from a bot. I had a client who sold a holder product for a substance that you're not allowed to sell online at Walmart. And their bot picked it up, they saw the picture, and they shut the item down because they thought we were actually selling that item, when clearly, if you read the description as a human, you would know we weren't selling the banned item. We were just selling something that goes with it. And it was because it was a toxic substance. It was pepper spray, right? It was something for a pepper spray holder. So you don't Shopify is not going to do that to you. If you build your own WordPress WooCommerce site, that's not going to do it to you. So you got to be a little careful with these secondary platforms. Okay, so if you're using one of these and you have a Shopify site, everything should go through the Shopify site, right? That should be your primary source, meaning if a sale is made on Etsy, that sale is then pulled into Shopify and it's managed and fulfilled from there. Then you can integrate it with however you're doing inventory tracking from Shopify. So Shopify needs to be that online hub and everything else feeds into it, because Shopify will track all of that, and then you can get that data to get pulled onto your Google Analytics report. So you can see that, 100 sales came into Shopify, and a portion of them came from Etsy, a portion of them were directly to the Shopify site, and then another portion was from Walmart or whatever other sales channel. So they have sales channel integration, which is very useful. This keeps you from having to pull that data from Walmart, from Etsy, which is actually a little more challenging. They don't have those integration pieces quite built in yet. But if you pull it all into Shopify first, then that data is at your fingertips to put onto Google Data Studio via Supermetrics. Okay. The last one we're going to talk about is the one that people don't think about a lot, which is Google Shopping. And Google Shopping is done via a Google Merchant account. Google Merchant accounts are free. If you have a Shopify site, they walk you through the process to set up that Google Merchant account pretty simply. And what this allows you to do is that if you have 10 products, 15 products, however many products you have on your Shopify site, each one that is connected to the Google Merchant account will be searchable via Google Shopping, which is organic search. So someone goes to Google and says, I want to buy metal rings. And if your store sells metal rings, Google is going to put up that shopping tab where they can then click through and buy it from your site. And that is becoming a huge way that people are shopping, right? Google has a whole Google Shop section. You can search for anything. It pulls the products up. And just from the data that we're seeing from our retail clients, it's a pretty decent sales source. And again, like anything that's organic and free from Google, why not use it? Even if you only get 2 sales a year from it, it's 2 sales you didn't have. But you might surprise yourself once you start tracking it. So since it is part of Google Organic, the Google Merchant Center data isn't pullable directly into Google Data Studio. It's a little weird. You can pull it into Google Analytics using the new GA4 platform. So Google Analytics started out with their universal platform. Then they switched to a tag called GA4. No need to understand what it is, but it's just different data aggregated in a different way. And as part of GA4, you can pull the Google Merchant Center data, which is your Google Shopping data, in. And then from there, with Google Analytics, you can pull that into Google Data Studio. It's a couple different step process, but if you are using Google Analytics now on the universal platform, I do strongly suggest that you move over to GA4 as soon as possible, because I think they're saying in July of 2023, and I'm recording this in the middle of 2022, they're going to stop collecting data from that universal tag and only use GA4, which means you could lose your data. So you want at least a good year's worth of data for when they make that switch. We're getting emails about it all the time, at least once a week now. So regardless if you're using Google Shop, just make sure you take care of that sooner rather than later. Okay, so that is my entire list. And I know it's a lot. You're definitely going to want to go back and re-listen to some of this, maybe read through the rough transcript. I'm going to be doing articles and videos on some of this subset stuff too, which I'll link back into the show notes when those are done. So let's talk about your next steps. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to have a conversation with yourself and say, where are you at right now? Where do you fall in this mix? Are you an e-commerce only shop? Are you a brick and mortar e-commerce? Are you online and telephone? Do you go to fairs? All that other stuff. Figure out what that looks like for you today, right? Figure out what your current sales channels are. That's all these are. Like, where are you selling? And then create the report and pull that data in based off of what we talked about. This way you can at least see where your referral sources are coming from, right? And you may not have all of it right away. Something might be a little more tricky, like trying to get, you have a Google Merchant account and the Google Shop and you don't have a GA4 account. Get that converted over. Do those things to pull in the data that you're missing. Just do them one at a time, right? After you've got the main stuff done. So if you're an e-commerce store, pulling in your Shopify data and then getting that sales data from the different channels should be your primary goal. Then start pulling the others in. Once you have that view of all your sales channels, then look at it and say, hey, what other sales channels do I want to add? Where else could I be making money? Do you want to start pulling in secondary sales sources? You could be a retail shop and you decide, oh, maybe I should be selling on Walmart because my audience shops at Walmart a lot. And the Walmart platform is growing by leaps and bounds every single day. So here are my final thoughts for you. This is really advanced stuff, right? Data aggregating, pulling, setting up sales channels. Yeah, it's a lot and it can be hard, right? The whole process of the Google Shop, yeah, it's a process, this 3-step dance that they're doing just to get data to Google Data Studio, but it's definitely worth it. For you to be able to see this stuff is absolutely worth it. So if you don't like software, you don't like setting up systems, reach out to me to discuss your next steps, those take action steps, and we can help you get that all set up for sure. We have done this for multiple clients, both retail, service-based. It's one of the things that I love to do. So in this instance, you may have a great web person, you may have a great social media person, someone who's creating your digital ads, and that is perfect. That is totally fine. Keep them doing what they're doing. Doesn't mean they know how to do data aggregation and to pull this in. The last thing you want is someone fumbling around with a report and the data's not right. And you absolutely need to do this as part of your retail business. That's how you're going to grow. You're going to grow by these inches once you get these different sales channels set up. So here at Inkyma, we love giving back to the business community. I provide a 45-minute free consultation to talk about your sales channels, your Google Data Studio, search, whatever you need to have as part of that discussion. Just go to inkyma.com. inkyma.com and click on the schedule a marketing evaluation button and pick your date and time, and we are on the calendar together. We also have a contact form there. Fill it out, put in your question, put in a show suggestion, and I will absolutely answer that. We have a great blog resource for you for the DIY marketing masterminds. There we write articles, we create short how-to videos, we have longer training videos, anything that you need to really get down to the nitty-gritty of marketing your business. And then, of course, we have this podcast for you as well. So if you found this information helpful and useful, and you know other retailers, e-commerce people, share it with them, right? The purpose of what we're trying to do here with these resources is to help all businesses grow and thrive. So thanks so much for listening and have an amazing day.